Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Police responded to a 911 call.
Dramatic video of gun insanity in the Bronx.
Police releasing a new video of a person that they are still trying to track down.
Defund the police is not the answer.
Many people surveyed said they just don't feel safe in the city.
It's a shooting outside of a store.
This is Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast.
Police this morning are searching for the person who turned this Harlem platform to a crime scene.
A Red Apple Media Podcast Network production. Now, here's Bo Dietl.
Welcome back to Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast. Today's guest is my friend Louis Gregory. About Louis Gregory, he's been helping me tremendously. After I got appointed by President Trump on the Homeland Security Advisory Council, Louis has been giving me extraordinary good ideas about how to help Homeland Security in the different agencies. Louis grew up in a neighborhood which was pretty tough environment. His dad went away to jail, and his life changed forever after 9/11. Louis stepped away from the entertainment business and rose to senior leadership in Homeland Security, Customs, and Border Patrol, operating at the national level during the formative years of the DHS. A lot of people don't know this was formed after 9/11, the Homeland Security. Federal officers are deployed into American cities, and questions grow around anti-ICE protests about their training, their accountability, and public safety. Louis brings real expertise on a conversation that matters right now. This is One Tough Podcast. Let's go get into it. Our little background setup. You grew up with a father that went to jail, Louis. What was that like as a kid?
You know, growing up, first of all, when my dad went to jail, Bo, my mom didn't tell me he was in jail. She told me he was in the hospital. And it wasn't until we went to Lewisburg and visited my old man so many times that finally I asked my mom, hey, is daddy going to DIE? And she said, no, why do you ask me that? And I said, well, he's been in the hospital for a really long time. And that's when she broke the news to me that it wasn't really a hospital.
How long did he did, Lou?
As I recollected, it was about 3 or 4 years. During my time in elementary school, he was up in Pennsylvania, and we would go up on the weekends to see him. And he got out of jail right about the time that I was about 10 years old, I think. And by the time I was 11 or 12, he passed away.
Wow. I mean, did that kind of push your whole life towards a different structure and service? Did it create real challenges not having your dad around?
You know, in retrospect, when I can look back at it now, it certainly did. And it definitely created difficulties for my mom raising me without my dad there until she was eventually remarried. And, you know, and I can look back and I can say to myself how tough it must have been on her. But in the moment, I guess I didn't know any better. I thought a lot of those things were normal. I have these memories of my dad, you know, being in his Cadillac and finding bullets in the cup holder. And to me, that was a normal thing. I didn't know that was not something every kid's dad didn't have in the cup holder of their Cadillac.
And Louis, where did you actually grow up? What area?
So I grew up going between Long Island, Queens, and Brooklyn. My mom lived on the island. My dad lived in Queens. And my dad also had one of his businesses in Brooklyn. So we would kind of bounce around those three places.
Gotcha. Yeah. And, you know, how did these experiences shape you into, before law enforcement, how did it shape you into going that direction? You know, you were working with Billy Joel, you had a music career and all that. And how all of a sudden did you decide to switch your career path?
I think, you know, for me, one thing that I did learn from my dad was hard work. And I also learned the pitfalls of what can happen if you try to take shortcuts and get to where you want to go without working hard. And, you know, it's funny you mentioned Billy Joel, because taking those lessons and learning how to hustle and work my way into situations where I could have opportunities is how I ended up working for Billy Joel. But the biggest takeaway from growing up with your dad in jail is that you don't ever want to go to jail because you see how terrible it is on your family.
Yeah, yeah. And I think your whole life really changed, like a lot of people, after 9/11. Where were you when it happened, and what was this change of your life path? Good.
So for me, when 9/11 happened, I was on an adventure. I was at an age where I didn't know what a career was. I didn't realize the importance of benefits and a salary. And I thought that being a federal agent was just a sexy title and a cool job to have. So when I was at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center taking weapons of mass destruction training, I thought that what came across the TV was a training video. And a few moments later, when I learned it was real, I also realized that I was no longer on an adventure, that my country actually needed me, and it was time for me to take it seriously.
Now, Louis, you served on all different senior levels of Homeland Security and Customs, Border Protections. For the listeners, why don't you break it down when you first started, where you started, how you elevated yourself to become one of the top people?
Sure. I started as, first of all, when I started, there was no Department of Homeland Security. As you mentioned, it was created by President Bush after 9/11. And it actually, although 9/11 happened in 2001, the agency wasn't created until 2003. So I started with the Department of Treasury as an inspector, and that was absorbed into what would become U.S. Customs and Border Protection. U.S. Customs, Immigration, and Agriculture came together with Border Patrol and some of the air and marine assets to create what we know as CBP today. So when I was absorbed into that, I became part of a transition team that started from the ground up creating this new component of what would be Homeland Security. And I started at the lowest level as a trainee. I was promoted 9 times until I was eventually a director, a chief, a station chief, a watch commander. So I had a great experience because I didn't take any shortcuts. Going back to hustling and working hard, I worked my way up through every single rank and uniform from the very bottom to the very top until I found myself next to the White House in the Ronald Reagan building as a director. The highest rank I achieved was director, and I was over a section called Planning, Policy, Analysis, and Evaluation. And one of the things we did was we looked at the operations, the budgets, the staffing. We analyzed what was happening within the largest law enforcement agency in America, and we created innovative ways to take law enforcement to the next level using innovation and technology. And I think one of the best projects that I helped develop under Assistant Commissioner John Wagner was Global Entry, which I think you're probably familiar with.
Yes. Yes, and the important aspect of this thing, people don't understand Homeland Security is made up with, 23 agencies? How many agencies are on the Homeland Security?
I believe there's actually 25 agencies.
Yeah, and some of them, ICE, what else?
Well, you have the Secret Service, ICE, FEMA, Federal Protective Services. You have the Secret Service. You have Customs and Border Protection. There's a very long list. And if you ask me, having been there in the very beginning, I think there is too many. I think the agency has gotten too big. And I think it was created to eliminate stovepipes that were identified during 9/11 that they felt could have broke down the ability of agencies to communicate. So they determined that they would fix them by creating one large agency, and I think it's created another problem. And it's a monster.
Lou, from my experience, I know there was a breakdown between the FBI and also with the CIA, because we all knew there was information that came out about this attack that was well known, and it wasn't communicated between the FBI, the CIA and the FBI, hence opening the door up for the 9/11 tragedy. And I know for a fact. So that was, I guess, one of the catalysts to try to put everything together to communicate amongst each other. Is that correct, Lou?
From an intel perspective, I'm sure there's a lot of reality in that. And from an operational perspective, there's the inability for communications on the ground when you have. So it's a double-edged sword. When they merged customs and immigration together, now they think they don't have to worry about those two agencies communicating with each other because now they're one. But the other side of that coin is now that they're one, they've lost their specialties. They've lost their, you had people with immigration who were immigration experts. You had people with customs who were customs experts. And now, as we approach, 23 years later, and those people are retiring or already retired, those subject matter experts in those fields are gone. And you can kind of equate it to what you see with the UFC and mixed martial arts compared to boxing. In boxing, you have somebody who's a master of their trade, and nobody that's not a boxer can do what a boxer does. But then you have mixed martial arts where they take a little bit of every discipline and put them together, but they're not as good at any of those as the boxer is at his, right? So it's like a Swiss Army knife of law enforcement that we've created. But none of those tools in the Swiss Army knife are as good as the real tool would be by itself, if that makes sense.
When CBP officers are deployed and what's coming up, and I had an incident last night where I was at a restaurant when some liberal person had asked me, "Oh, what's that on your lapel?" And I said, "The American flag. What's on the other side?" I said, "Homeland Security." I said, "It was appointed by President Trump." The man went psychopath in a restaurant screaming, "F Trump, F this, F that." So that brings us to, I think, what happens when federal agents are dropped into these unfamiliar cities and, they're tasked upon trying to get the criminal element that are illegally in this country. And that's what it's all about. But I mean, as far as training with the Border Patrol agents and all that, these people are not really trained for these kind of demonstrations and all that. Am I correct? What's your feeling with that?
Well, I think just like in a police department, you have a certain group or unit that has advanced tactical training, whether it be entry or crowd control or riots. And that particular group is the group that's going to attack that function that they're assigned to. And you can't expect an entire department or agency to be put in that position because they don't all have that training. And what I think we're experiencing now may be the inability to align the workforce with the objective, because it's just the workforce is too big and the objective is too big. So you've run out of people that have the exact training you need. So as a Band-Aid, you start to give them training. And that training, in order for training to work, it's got to be repetitive. It's got to be given over months and years. And it's that you are a police detective. Your training never stops. And it gets ingrained in you. And if you have people who this is not what they do every day, some of these people might be working at an airport, a seaport, or a border crossing, checking. Yeah, and they've never been in a city on the streets dealing with a riot before. So
and I saw it myself, Louis. I mean, these Border Patrol agents, they're out there, and when they capture somebody coming over the border or whatever, they're in complete control. They are the boss. They have to realize, and obviously they didn't realize when you go into neighborhoods and you're dealing with people, especially with this George Soros back, there's Neville Roy Singman, and all these financial things that are put together. These are being financed, these demonstrations, anti-ICE, anti-this. There's signs, every aspect of it. These people are being paid to be agitators. And it's one thing. I know how this all started. When we started to investigate the criminality of Medicare, Medicaid by these Somalans in Minnesota, and all of a sudden this whole thing reversed the whole attention. The attention became on ICE. It was all brought to take the attention away from all these billions of dollars that were being stolen there. And why not attack ICE? And these couple of shootings that, be very honest with you, questionable shootings, and they're questionable until the jury comes out. Every shooting is questioned, and that's the way I feel about it. My point is once they're there, then they become the Gestapo. They're called Nazis, and now it's happened across this country. And like I just said, as soon as last night, me having a nice dinner when a guy here heard Donald Trump screaming, yelling, 85-year-old man, F Trump, F this, F that. I never realized the anger that these people are getting from what we saw occur in Minnesota. And certainly if I was in charge, I would have pulled them out a long time ago and said, we've got to settle the temperature down. When something's tumultuous and happening every day, you got to bring down the temperature. Pull them out until you have a plan on going after the ones that we want, the real criminal. Maybe, Louis, if the local authorities would do what they're supposed to be doing when someone who's a criminal, who's illegally here, and turn them over to ICE, maybe we wouldn't have this. But that ain't taken away from what everybody on the TV set saw, what was going on in Minnesota. It wasn't a good look for us. I'm part of Homeland Security right now, and from me in a professional sense, it was a good look. What was your feeling about what happened?
You know, I think one of the biggest issues that's happening in Minnesota is that when somebody goes to jail and that person who's in jail is here illegally and a detainer is put in the record by ICE or, whatever border security agency puts a detainer, which means that you're asking them to detain that person when they're released for ICE to pick them up because they're no longer lawfully in the United States, and they're denying those requests. And so what's having to happen
even for the criminals, Lou, I'm talking about criminals
only. Yeah. So what's happening is now it could be cut and dry real easy. ICE just goes to the jail and picks up the criminal and handles business. But because there's no cooperation, that criminal is now being released into the community. And now ICE has to go out in the streets and interdict these people in creating this situation, which could be alleviated through some sort of memorandum of understanding between the local government and
cooperation. Right. And it happens here, Lou, in New York. I mean, they come right out. The governor just came out and supports this Mondumi guy, the mayor of New York City, and said we're not going to cooperate with ICE. So it means if somebody rapes a little girl and they put in incarceration and they go to jail, they're not going to cooperate and turn them over to ICE. This is ridiculous. It's foolish. And this is what we're facing right now. There are extremes, There are extremes one way or the other. I like the idea about the body cams being worn and all that. And they have to effectively target people who are criminals and go. But if you're doing apprehension, now all of a sudden it's leaking out about where they're going to be, when they're going to be. They're putting roadblocks up, checking people. I mean, it's got to a point where this is anarchy over there. My feelings, if I was in charge of ICE right now, I'd pull everybody out. I'd pull them out. And then I would talk with the president and say, look, any federal funding going to that city or state will stop until they cooperate with the federal law of this land when people are criminally, illegally in this country and they're being arrested and being released. I get angry about it. It's common sense, Lou. What do you think?
Well, you touched upon the body cams. I think Axon makes a great body cam, and it is a terrific tool for us as law enforcement. And I would like those to be innovated to have facial recognition, so that they're not just capturing what's happening, but they can alert law enforcement to people who have an NCIC record or somebody that's a bolo because they're dangerous or, somebody that they need to pick up and may not even know. I think all body cams should be used as a tool for that rather than simply just capturing footage. And now with the introduction of artificial intelligence, it's easier than ever to adapt that stuff. And I talk about this all the time. And in your law enforcement training, we're trained to come out of the holster, to fire 2 or 3 shots within 3 seconds. And we're doing that to neutralize a threat and to make sure we get home safely. But, well, when you were a police officer, when I was in uniform, and when people are working today, as far as what their tools are, their uniform, their body armor, their gun, other than giving us some intermediary force weapons, they have not made any great advancements in how to protect us, the law enforcement officers. And if we can if Elon Musk can create Falcon 9 and send people into outer space and outfit them in clothing to be on Mars, in what are wearing to protect them on their weapons, to give them stronger stopping power that's not lethal, to grant them a longer amount of time to make these decisions so they don't have to shoot so quickly. Because right now, we haven't innovated any of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of technologies out there, i.e. with the taser and all that, the body cams, that's very good. But I think what has happened now, without the proper training, you can't expect to grab a bunch of ICE agents and Border Patrol people and throw them into the inner city. This is something where the cooperation with the police has to be there. And if they're shutting streets down, they're blockading, that's the city police. That's their responsibility. So I would definitely, if I was in charge of that, pull my people out and say to the police chief, you're allowing people to be deterred from going to their homes with blockades. They're checking identification. And then you know what the problem is? I always worry about the officers hesitating at a time because they're going after some bad guys. And these guys, some of them are armed. And I'd hate to see one of the federal officers getting shot or killed. I guarantee you, Louis, the morale at ICE and CBP is got to be at the all-time low. All they get is this nonsense. Like I got last night. I'm in a friggin' restaurant, Lou, and some little 85-year-old liberal little punk man there, rich little man, screaming and yelling at me and about the Gestapo tactics of Homeland Security and President Trump and it. It's just it's not a good flavor, and I worry about it because we do have midterms coming up, and if the president don't take down those midterms and win with his party, we're gonna have real problems, and I don't want this country to go that way. And the reality, Louis, is I just feel as though it's not a good look. And you one thing about it, Lou. All the news media loves to plaster all that crap on the news, on all the liberal channels, and give that one side of this Gestapo, they call it, the stormtroopers taking over the city and locking up innocent people and all that. And it's, what's your feeling, Lou? You started Homeland Security. What's your feeling where we're at now? How would you try to help change the direction?
I watched acting ICE Director Lyons, CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott. They were testifying yesterday before Congress about that very thing. And I listened to Acting Director Lyons talk about his own family being threatened by people in the same manner that you talk about, you experiencing at that restaurant. And it's terrible that any law enforcement officer be treated in that way, because we should be raising this generation the same way that our generation was raised, that the men and women behind the badge are American heroes. And that's why I wear this shirt, right? That's right on my chest where my heart is. America's front line, because that's what they are. And that's what makes our country so, so great, because we take for granted that we can walk out in the street and be safe. And that is because the men and the women that are protecting us at the border, protecting us in our cities. And if we start demonizing those heroes and treating them that way, and by the way, there's nothing about politics when you're wearing that uniform. And when I wore that uniform for 20 years, I never thought about Republican or Democrat or independent. I thought about the laws that I was enforcing and the mission that I was on. And I didn't write those laws, nor did these men and women on America's front line write those laws. Congress wrote those laws, and Congress has had both a Republican majority and a Democrat majority over recent years. And either of them could have changed whatever they wanted.
Right.
And they haven't. So the laws are being enforced, and that's their job.
Well,
they take an oath to enforce the law.
You hit the nail right on the head. If you want to change something, change the law. Don't have a law in effect and say you can't enforce the law. Now, that leads me to something that I'm really happy about meeting you, because I've never seen stuff. You started a company called America's Frontline, and you have the coins. These are the coins that are called challenge coins and all that. And you've sent me some of them. These are the most remarkable coins I've ever seen in my life that you've developed. How big of a company is this? These are coins for the people listening. And again, it's America's Frontline, and Lou is the head of that. And how'd you get into these coin thing?
You know, I created this. It was a hobby. I started collecting coins, and I fell in love with them. And then I've always loved art, so I started creating my own coins, and it went from a hobby to a business. And next thing I know, it's the largest challenge coin retailer in America. And the mission was to create something positive about law enforcement to enhance morale. The same way baseball cards were created during they were created earlier, but they became popular during the Second World War. And it's a way for the public and for the members of those departments and agencies to collect something that they can be proud about. And I've done it for sports teams, companies, and pretty much every law enforcement agency in America. And it's probably one of my biggest accomplishments.
Hey, beautiful. And you have my friend Michael Strahan is on board with you, huh?
Michael Strahan has loved my coins. He's been a great supporter. And I have to say his favorite coin is a coin that I made about cigars. And it says, you got to tap that ash.
Oh, well, all of a sudden, but this is one of the great things that I enjoy. Matter of fact, I got a couple of coins that you gave me that I will be delivering to our president next week when I'm in Washington, and I'm sure he's going to love them. And the one is that great attack into Iran where no one got killed, and the great attack into what's that place called in there, South America, where we took the guy back out in handcuffs with no fatalities with the Americans. And you keep developing these coins, and I'm for sure, I know the president very well, 45 years. He's going to love the coins that you gave me to give to him next week, and I will be giving to him.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to some of your music stuff, and before we wind down. After 2 decades away from music, how did you find your way going back there, leaving Homeland Security? You know, it was just funny. I was at the inauguration in Washington at the golf course when we had the most beautiful firework display I've ever seen. And I weaseled my way into being right next to the president and the first lady. I was along with my friend Steve Witkoff there, and we had your great singer there, Christopher Macchio, who is one of the greatest opera singers I have ever heard. And you were part of that putting that whole thing together with the fireworks and the singing. So that was, now you're operating in that area. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember I didn't know you at the time. And I remember seeing you. And at that moment, only the first family was allowed out there onto this special area. And everyone else was ushered off, 100 yards away. And I see this sharp-dressed guy in his suit. And he says to the Secret Service, said, only the first family. He goes, oh, it's all right. I'm with the president. and then I turn around and there he is. I walk out there and you're out there. So I said, oh, he must be, he guy is somebody. Be important.
No, I bullshitted. Yeah. I bullshitted my way with my wife, and we bullshitted our way. I just stayed close to Steve Witkoff because Steve was my partner for many years in real estate. And of course, I know the president, and I honestly feel closer than just a jerk off. I feel very close to the Trump family. I was at his wedding with his wife. I was at Junior's wedding at Mar-a-Lago. So I feel like I'm more than just a J.O. That's what we call jerk off. So I kind of weaseled my way in there, and it was the most beautiful firework display with the singing of Christopher. It was dreamy. I wish everybody in this country could have been there and saw what I saw with the emotion. It was beautiful. You produced a magnificent show that night. You're listening to Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast. Please stay tuned with this message, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
This President's Day, upgrade the look of your home without breaking your budget. Save up to 50% site-wide on new window treatments at Blinds.com. Blinds.com makes it easy with free virtual consultations on your schedule and samples delivered to your door fast and free. With over 25 million windows covered and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, you can count on Blinds.com to deliver results you'll love.
Shop up to 50% off site-wide plus a free professional measure during the President's Day mega sale happening right now at Blinds.com. Terms apply.
I get so many headaches every month.
It could be chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those who have 14 or fewer headache days a month. Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor. Visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
You know, we got to talk. We got to close it down a little bit. You know, looking to the country right now. We're going to wind it up, right? We're so divided. Hence, what happened to me last night. I mean, look, I don't know this guy. For all it was, Trump's name comes up, and right away, it's like you got typhoid. You know, we're headed for some trouble here. The country's divided. What's your feelings with that?
Well, you know, I certainly tend to agree with you with the division that we're experiencing. And a lot of the things that the left are mad about right now are the very same agenda items that presidents from that party were pushing. You know, pretty much every single one of them were giving speeches with the same talking points that President Trump has given with regards to the need to protect our borders, to stop illegal immigration. And that's not a political agenda. That's the Immigration and Naturalization Act. That's the laws that govern the United States. So I would just say that people should get to know the three branches of the government, right? The executive, the legislative, and the administrative. The police fall under administrative. Congress falls under legislative. Mm. And once they can figure out civics, which maybe they don't teach civics in school anymore, Bo, I don't know. But maybe if people could learn civics and understand what's what, then they would know how to effect the changes that they want, rather than blaming and demonizing the people that are here to protect America.
As soon as today, I'm watching the congressional hearings, and they have congressional hearings about something with the Attorney General, and all they're doing is bringing up Epstein. This is their new flavor of the month, and that's all. Epstein. It's just funny. My daughter called me last night and said, Dad, you're on the Epstein files. I said, really? I said, I met the guy a couple of times in Mar-a-Lago. He ran away from me every time he saw me because he knew who I was. He probably thought I was investigating him. I never had conversation with the creep, but all of a sudden, it's in the Epstein file. If you look, Bo Dietl, next thing it pops up, my partner, Jack Morris, owns the Hard Rock Casino in Atlantic City. I put the deal together with Jim Allen from the Hard Rock. So all of a sudden, in the email, it's from his attorney, and his attorney was an attorney Weingarten. The next thing was the attorney is sending an email to Epstein in jail, and he says, oh, yeah, I have to go to this event in Atlantic City. One of my clients bought the Hard Rock Casino, and I'm going to be having dinner there. I'm going to be sitting with Fat Boy Chris Christie, call him Fat Boy, Bo Dietl, and Pitbull. So that's how I made the Epstein files. So I guess I'm part of the Epstein files. But my whole point is, right now, they like to, instead of focusing on the good and positive things, they want to just focus on negativity to tear our president down. And I know how much you love our president. I do. And again, we're going to wind down now, but I really want to thank you, Lou. And you and I are going to be communicating a lot. And people could thank you for the facial recognition. Soon you won't have to take your passport or your driver's license to the airport. Facial recognition will control everything. And this is part of one of your initiatives that you've helped me tremendously. We have a great director of the TSA she listens to everything. McNeil, excellent lady there. And I look forward for your advice in the coming months on what we have to do with the advisory council. And Lou, I thank you very, very much. And God bless you and your family. And I'll talk to you real soon, Lou. You have a great day down in Florida.
Have a great day, Bo.
I want to thank my guest, Louis, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Until next week, tune in to Bo Dietl's One Tough Podcast, and we'll bring some interesting people and interesting subjects. Thank you for tuning in.